They are icons. And then there is Michael Jackson, a figure whose influence didn't just reshape music, but permanently altered the way the world sees fashion identity and performance itself. Decades after his passing, his silhouette alone, a fedora tipped low, a single glittering glove catching the light, a military-style jacket commanding attention, remains instantly recognizable across continents, generations, and cultures. But here's the question that still echoes through fashion houses, music studios, and pop culture debates today. How did one artist turn clothing into a global language? How did stage outfits become symbols of power, rebellion, vulnerability, and transformation all at once? Tonight, we're not just revisiting iconic looks. We're pulling back the curtain on a legacy that continues to shape modern fashion, influence global artists, and spark debate among critics and fans alike. From the streets of America to the runways of Paris, from music videos that change history to cultural conversations still unfolding, this is the untold story of style as storytelling. And at the center of it all, the man who didn't just wear fashion, he became it. 2. Background and context. Deep research style to understand the style legacy of Michael Jackson. We have to go back to the beginning long before the rhinestones, the military jackets, and the moonwalk became global symbols. In the late 1960s and early 1970s, as a child prodigy performing with the Jackson 5 Jacksons, early image was carefully curated within the Martone system. Matching outfits, polished presentation, and coordinated choreography weren't just aesthetic choices. They were part of a broader strategy to position Black artists for mainstream American audiences during a time of cultural tension and racial division. Even at that early stage, style was never just about clothing. It was about access, perception, and power. As Jackson transitioned into his solo career in the late 1970s and early 1980s, the cultural landscape in the United States was shifting. The rise of music television, particularly MTV, created a new visual economy, one where image became just as important as sound. Artists were no longer just heard. They were seen, analyzed, and consumed visually. Jackson didn't just adapt to this new era. He defined it. When Thriller was released in 1982, it wasn't just a musical breakthrough. It was a cultural explosion. Music videos like Billie Jean and Thriller didn't just showcase choreography. They introduced a new kind of fashion storytelling. The red leather jacket, the black loafers, the white socks. These weren't random wardrobe choices. They were carefully constructed, visual symbols designed to be instantly recognizable. Fashion historians often point to this period as a turning point when pop stars became fashion icons in a way that transcended traditional boundaries. Jackson's style wasn't confined to one genre. It blended military influences, streetwear elements, theatrical flair, and high fashion detailing into something entirely new. And crucially, it was accessible. Fans didn't need a runway to participate. A single glove, a fedora, a red jacket. These became entry points into a global identity. But behind the spectacle, there was a deeper narrative, unfolding, one that touched on race, fame, identity, and transformation in ways that still resonate today. The evolution of Michael Jackson's style can be traced through distinct eras, each marked by visual reinvention and cultural impact. In the early 1980s, during the rise of Thriller, Jackson introduced what would become one of the most iconic fashion statements in music history, the single sequined glove. According to those close to the production, the glove wasn't initially intended to become a global symbol, but under the bright lights of television performances, particularly the legendary Martone 25 performance, it became something else entirely, a beacon. It reflected light. It drew the eye. It transformed movement into spectacle. Then came the red leather jacket from Thriller. Bold, angular, and unmistakable. It merged horror aesthetics with street fashion in a way that had never been done before. It wasn't just a costume. It was a character. By the time Jackson entered the bad era in 1987, his style had taken on a more aggressive urban edge. Leather jackets covered in buckles, zippers, and metallic details reflected a shift in tone, a harder, more defiant persona. This wasn't accidental. It aligned with the themes of the album and the cultural atmosphere of the late 1980s. In the 1990s, during the Dangerous and History eras, Jackson's fashion became even more theatrical and symbolic. Military-style jackets, gold armor-inspired outfits, and elaborate stage costumes signaled authority, vulnerability, and global ambition all at once. Each look told a story. Each era redefined expectations. And importantly, each transformation kept audiences watching. 4. Expert analysis. Why his style changed everything. Fashion experts, cultural critics, and music historians have long debated the significance of Jackson's style choices. But across disciplines, one consensus remains. He didn't just follow trends. He created a new framework. From a fashion perspective, Jackson blurred the lines between costume and couture. Designers began to recognize the power of performance where, as a form of high fashion, theatrical elements, once confined to stage productions, began appearing on runways. From a media standpoint, his partnership with MTV redefined visual storytelling. Music videos became cinematic, experiences where wardrobe played a central role in narrative construction. From a cultural perspective, Jackson's style challenged traditional norms around masculinity. His use of makeup, jewelry, fitted silhouettes, and androgynous elements spark conversations that continue in today's fashion industry. And from a business standpoint, his look became a brand. Merchandising tied to his image, jackets, gloves, hats generated massive global demand. It was one of the earliest examples of a pop star's visual identity driving commercial success at scale. Even in today's digital age, the influence of Michael Jackson continues to dominate social media platforms. On apps like TikTok and Instagram, millions of users recreate his iconic looks, from the Billie Jean outfit to the smooth criminal suit. These aren't just nostalgic tributes. They are acts of cultural participation. Younger generations, many born after Jackson's peak, are discovering his style for the first time, often through viral content. And the reactions are strikingly similar to those from decades ago. Fascination, admiration, and imitation. But the conversation isn't one-sided. There are debates about appropriation, about the commercialization of his image, and about how his legacy should be interpreted in a modern context. Some argue that his influence is so pervasive that it's impossible to separate contemporary pop fashion from his impact. Others suggest that the industry has yet to fully acknowledge just how transformative his contributions were. They are celebrities. They are legends. And then there are the rare figures who become something larger than fame itself, symbols so powerful that a single silhouette can trigger recognition anywhere on Earth. A tilted fedora, a black sequined jacket catching the light, white socks frozen beneath the spotlight, a shadow leaning forward before gravity itself seems to surrender. Decades after his rise to superstardom, Michael Jackson remains more than an artist. He remains an image burned into global culture. But tonight, we are not simply revisiting a pop icon. We are stepping into the deepest story behind the image, the psychology of performance, the construction of identity, and the transformation of fashion into a universal language understood by millions across generations. Because Michael Jackson did not just influence style. He changed the way modern culture understands visual identity itself. Before him, musicians wore clothes. After him, artists built worlds. And the question that continues to fascinate historians, designers, critics, and fans alike is this: how did one performer turn costumes into mythology? How did jackets, gloves, military belts, and carefully choreographed movements become symbols recognized from Tokyo to Paris, from New York to Lagos, from crowded city streets to small villages watching television screens for the very first time? To understand the answer, we have to go back long before the moonwalk became immortalized in entertainment history, long before Thriller changed the music industry forever, long before the screaming crowds, the sold-out stadiums, and the endless debates surrounding his legacy. We have to return to the beginning. The late 1960s. America was changing. Civil rights protests were reshaping society. Television was becoming more influential than ever before. Music was evolving rapidly, and the entertainment industry remained deeply divided by race and image. It was in this climate that a young boy from Gary, Indiana entered the spotlight alongside his brothers as part of the Jackson 5. Even then, presentation mattered. Matching suits, synchronized choreography, controlled smiles, perfectly rehearsed movements. Nothing was accidental. Motown Records understood something critical. In America at that time, Black performers were often forced to navigate impossible expectations in order to reach mainstream audiences. Appearance became strategy. Fashion became diplomacy. Performance became survival. The Jackson 5 were not simply marketed as talented musicians. They were presented as polished, approachable, and universally appealing. Behind the bright colors and infectious melodies was a carefully constructed visual system designed to cross cultural barriers during one of the most tense periods in modern American history. And standing at the center of it all was Michael, a child with extraordinary charisma and emotional intensity that cameras seemed unable to ignore. Even as a boy, he understood instinctively that movement could communicate emotion in ways words never could. Watch the early performances closely and something becomes immediately clear. Michael was already studying attention itself. Every spin, every glance toward the crowd, every dramatic pause carried intention. He knew how to direct eyes toward him without saying a single word. This ability would later become the foundation of his fashion empire. Because Michael Jackson never viewed clothing as decoration, he viewed it as storytelling. By the late 1970s, as disco exploded across dance floors and pop culture entered a new visual age, Michael began evolving beyond the image created for him during his childhood. His solo career marked more than musical independence. It marked visual rebirth. The world itself was changing. Television networks were expanding. Celebrity culture was accelerating. Music was becoming increasingly visual. And then came MTV. When the network launched in 1981, it transformed entertainment forever. For the first time, artists were not judged solely by how they sounded. They were judged by how they looked, how they moved, and how effectively they could create unforgettable imagery. This shift cannot be overstated. MTV created a new battlefield where image became power. And no artist understood this faster or more completely than Michael Jackson. Before Thriller, music videos were often promotional tools. After Thriller, they became cinematic events. Entire worlds constructed through choreography, lighting, costume design, narrative symbolism, and visual fantasy. Michael understood that audiences no longer wanted songs alone. They wanted mythology. And mythology requires icons. It requires symbols instantly recognized even without context. That realization gave birth to one of the most influential fashion evolutions in entertainment history. When Billie Jean premiered, viewers did not simply hear music. They witnessed a visual identity unlike anything pop culture had seen before. Black trousers stopping just above bright white socks. Shiny loafers emphasizing movement with every step. A black sequined jacket reflecting light like a human disco ball. Every detail was strategic. The white socks were not random. They highlighted footwork during dance sequences, forcing viewers to focus on rhythm and motion. The glittering jacket transformed ordinary stage lighting into spectacle. Cameras could not look away. Audiences could not forget it. Then came the glove, perhaps the single most iconic accessory in modern entertainment history. What makes the sequin glove fascinating is how simple the concept actually was. One glove, not two. That asymmetry created mystery immediately. It felt theatrical, futuristic, almost superhuman. Under television lights, the rhinestones reflected like stars. The glove did not merely complement movement. It amplified it. Every hand gesture suddenly carried dramatic weight. Historians often describe the Motown 25 performance in 1983 as the exact moment Michael Jackson transformed from superstar into mythological figure. When he performed Billie Jean and unveiled the moonwalk before a stunned audience, fashion and choreography fused into one unforgettable visual experience. The black hat, the sparkling glove, the perfectly tailored suit, the smooth, impossible movement across the stage. It was not simply a performance anymore. It was iconography being born in real time. The reaction was immediate and global. Fans began copying the look almost overnight. Stores sold out of black loafers and sequin gloves. Children practiced the moonwalk in school hallways. Teenagers imitated the fedora pose in mirrors, but the deeper significance went beyond imitation. Michael Jackson had achieved something extremely rare. He created fashion that ordinary people could participate in. High fashion often remains distant from everyday audiences, locked behind expensive brands and inaccessible runways. Michael changed that equation completely. His style felt magical but attainable. You did not need millions of dollars to become part of the image. A single glove could make you feel connected to the phenomenon. A red jacket could transform an ordinary fan into part of a worldwide cultural movement. And then Thriller arrived. Released in 1982, the album shattered records across the music industry, but its visual impact proved just as revolutionary as its sound. The Thriller music video remains one of the most influential pieces of visual storytelling ever created. Directed like a short horror film, it blurred the line between cinema and music in ways audiences had never experienced before. But alongside the choreography and zombies stood another unforgettable star. The red leather jacket. Sharp shoulders, aggressive lines, black detailing, instantly recognizable. The jacket became more than clothing. It became a symbol of transformation itself. Within the story, Michael shifts between ordinary young man, horror victim, monster, and supernatural performer. The jacket connected those identities together visually. It represented danger, rebellion, confidence, and fantasy all at once. Fashion critics later noted that the Thriller jacket permanently changed entertainment merchandising. Suddenly, audiences did not just want albums. They wanted wearable mythology. Replicas flooded markets around the world. Designers began studying the relationship between costume and celebrity branding more seriously than ever before. And perhaps most importantly, the jacket demonstrated how fashion could carry narrative meaning inside visual media. Michael Jackson was no longer wearing clothes for appearance alone. He was using fashion to communicate emotional states, character shifts, and symbolic themes. The success of Thriller also changed the relationship between Black artists and mainstream fashion industries. Luxury designers and major brands began recognizing the enormous commercial power of Black celebrity influence in global style culture. Michael's impact reached far beyond music charts. He was quietly reshaping fashion economics itself. Yet behind the spectacle, another transformation was taking place. Fame was changing Michael Jackson psychologically. The pressure of constant global attention intensified with each passing year. Cameras followed every movement. Every outfit became headline material. Every appearance triggered endless discussion. In response, his fashion choices grew increasingly controlled, theatrical, and symbolic. Clothing became armor. Accessories became shields. Sunglasses hid emotional exhaustion. Military-inspired jackets projected authority and discipline in the face of relentless scrutiny. Fashion was no longer simply artistic expression. It became protection. By the mid-1980s, Michael understood that the world expected reinvention from him constantly. Remaining visually static was impossible. Audiences demanded evolution. And Michael delivered it again with The Bad Era in 1987. If Thriller introduced fantasy and cinematic horror aesthetics, Bad introduced edge, aggression, urban rebellion. Directed visually by Martin Scorsese, the Bad short film presented Michael in a completely different form. The soft, mysterious elegance of earlier years evolved into something sharper and harder. Black leather dominated the aesthetic. Buckles, straps, metallic hardware, and layered textures created a look that felt industrial and confrontational. This was not accidental. America during the late 1980s experienced rising cultural tensions surrounding race, masculinity, and urban identity. Fashion reflected those anxieties. Streetwear, punk influences, biker aesthetics, and hip-hop culture all began reshaping mainstream visual culture. Michael absorbed those influences while transforming them into something unmistakably his own. The Bad Era clothing projected strength and defiance. Critics at the time debated whether Michael was attempting to appear tougher, more masculine, or more connected to urban culture. But perhaps the deeper truth was simpler. He understood that pop stardom required evolution through visual narrative. Every album cycle became its own cinematic universe with distinct emotional themes expressed through wardrobe design. This concept is now standard across modern pop culture. Artists today routinely build entire visual eras around albums, complete with signature colors, costumes, hairstyles, and symbolic imagery. But Michael Jackson helped pioneer that structure decades earlier. His fashion eras became chapters in an ongoing story consumed by global audiences. And what made the transformation even more powerful was the precision behind it. Nothing appeared random. Every buckle, every military stripe, every glove, every silhouette, everything carried intention. Designers who worked with Michael frequently described his extraordinary involvement in costume development. He studied fabrics carefully. He understood how certain materials reflected stage lighting. He analyzed movement constantly, ensuring jackets enhanced choreography rather than restricting it. He recognized that clothing on stage had different responsibilities than clothing in photographs. Stage fashion had to move dramatically from a distance. It had to communicate instantly even to audiences seated far away in enormous stadiums. Michael mastered this visual engineering better than almost anyone in entertainment history. During live performances, his outfits often featured reflective details specifically designed to capture light during spins and sudden movements. Armbands emphasized gestures. Structured shoulders created larger-than-life silhouettes. Slim pants focused attention on footwork. Every element supported performance psychology. Audiences were not simply hearing music. They were witnessing a carefully orchestrated visual illusion designed to create awe. And perhaps that is the key to understanding Michael Jackson's style legacy. He understood spectacle as emotional language. He knew that fashion could create anticipation before a single lyric was sung. The moment he stepped on stage, audiences already felt something. Power, mystery, excitement, drama.